All right, all right, all right. We are back. And as usual, we are brought to you by my friends at Alp. If you're tired of smoking, if you're tired of tobacco, if you're worried about the effects of all the chemicals and uh, tar and fiberglass and all the crap they put in tobacco products nowadays, then switch over to nicotine, straight nicotine pouches. Alp comes in 9, 6, or 3 milligrams. I smoked for 28 years. It's been almost a full year. It'll be a full year at the end of this month that I quit smoking. And I feel great. And Alp has helped me take the edge off on the days that are really, really stressful. Those nicotine pouches, they get your brain moving, they clear up brain fog, they get you thinking, they get you speaking, they get you acting right on days that you just cannot get your mind in the game. So, if you're looking for a solution to your tobacco habit or just your morning brain fog, give Alp a shot because it helps me out. And I've heard several people talk about how it helps them out. Like I heard Tim Welch the other day talking about how whenever he's going into the gym to train a fighter, he pops an Alp in, and that helps him see things in a different light, gets his brain moving, gets him motivated. And that's only 3 milligrams at a time. He's like, once a day, 3 milligrams, just when I'm in the gym getting ready for a fight. Then I'll pop in and out. So nicotine pouches are the way to go, and I've tried all of them. Alp is the best by far. I love Alp. I went till December. I used a different brand of nicotine pouch, and it was just kind of like, ugh, the flavor wasn't right. It kind of had this like grainy feeling inside the pouch, and then Alp came on the scene, and I ordered Alp, put it on recurring order because I was like, well, I'm going to use nicotine pouches and I'm going to help those people that I think are out there spreading the right message. So let me go ahead and put Alp on recurring order. Let me get 3 logs a month. That's 15 cans a month. That should last me. And it did. And it does. And it's great. And I love it more than I thought I would. It's much better than any other nicotine pouch out there. They have several, they have 4 different flavors. I choose the wintergreen. That's my favorite. But there's like a tropical fruit flavor, mint flavor, and some mountain wintergreen or something like that flavor. So go get you some out. Go to the link in the description below for 10% off your order and order $70 or more and get free shipping. So yeah, jump in this description. You click that link that says Alp. It's Alp all lit up in like blue. Just click on that. It'll bring you right to the website, right to the order sheet. You order with a 10% discount, and then you order $70 more, put it on recurring, and get free shipping every month and have your nicotine delivered straight to your door. Alp is my choice for nicotine pouches, and it should be yours too. So get down in that description, click on that link, get your 10% off, and order your $70 or more. You get free shipping. That's Alp, and that's what I use. We'll be back in a minute with Gord McGill. Here he is, as promised. Mr. Gord McGill, what's up, brother?
Hey, good morning, Tommy. How's things?
Oh, everything's going well, man. Working a lot, but I like the new gig. So yeah, everything's going well.
Are you still dragging around a flatbed with a hitchhiker on the back doing construction site delivery?
No, so this our store closed, and so I transferred within the company to the distribution center. So I'm running a flatbed with a curtain.
Okay.
Yeah, so I deliver to a lot of the stores and I pick up at the mills around here.
Okay. So is it a like a rolling tarp kit or like it's got a roof like it's an old style curtain cider?
Yeah, no, it's got the roof too.
Okay. Oh. Don't yeah, good. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. At
I
least I
did a
don't have to.
lot.
At least I don't have to fucking tarp.
Yeah, I mean that gets old after a while. I did a lot of tarping. The curtain siders and accordion tarp trailers are good for if you're hauling the same stuff that's in dimension all the time.
Mm,
It gets a little weird if it gets too close to the sides or it's oversized or really high.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It ain't too bad. I mean, we're running. I mean, it's mainly what I'm picking up is plywood and lumber. So two bys, two by eights, two by fours, two by sixes, all different lengths. So, but it ain't too bad. I mean, I'm picking up from Georgia Pacific. They kind of got it down to a science. They're loading, hundreds of trucks every day, so they know how to load the trucks.
right. Do they, and they don't, I'm assuming you don't get held up too often and they have competent forklift operators and all that.
Yeah, they're not too bad. Uh, so there's one location that you're guaranteed to be there for about 2 hours, at least 2 hours. It's just because they're so busy all the time. There's always trucks. It's rare to get there and there's not a truck in front of you. Um, but most of them are an hour. You're in and out an hour and 15 minutes from
That's not
from
too,
check in. From check in to scale out, it's about an hour and 15 minutes, something like that.
that's not too terribly bad. And this distribution center, is it, how much of a commute is it for you?
Hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, so you're commuting 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah, yeah, 140 miles.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, yeah. So
Are you having to go all the way into Houston or something?
no, Dayton, which is it's outside of Houston.
Okay.
Like if you're not familiar with the area, it'd be hard. It's hard to explain
Oh,
where it's at.
I haven't been down there in forever.
Right.
And this would be the time of year that I wouldn't be coming down there. I imagine it's starting to get warm.
Yeah, it was well, I woke up yesterday and it was 56 degrees yesterday morning, and then by the time I wrapped up fishing about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it was 81 degrees.
All right. Oh, 81's not terrible.
No, it
Just
was not it's not horrible yet.
when it starts pushing a century, you know?
Yeah. And well, it's so and then like last week it was humid like every day. So you'd walk outside in the morning, it'd be like it was already 80 degrees and 100% humidity. So by the time I get in my truck, I'm sweating, you know, like
Uh,
it's just, I can't even walk from the front door to the vehicle without breaking a sweat. So,
yeah, I have to put up with snow and rain and garbage and cold up here, but man, I'm glad I live without hot humidity. Oh,
see, I can deal with the humidity and the heat better than I can deal with the snow. Like I'm just like
yes, sir. Well, you're a golf monkey and I'm a snow monkey, so there we
that's
go.
that's right. I'm a
So what's
swamp
happening?
swamp rat.
What's on your mind? What's happening today?
So I saw something the other day and it just made me laugh and I was like, I got to get Gord on to talk about this because I thought it was so funny. So you and I have often talked and you talk about it a lot, you write about it a lot, that it's the common narrative that we have a trucker shortage, everything's a trucker shortage. Well, here they come on Thursday. The media pops up on Wednesday or Thursday of last week, and I start hearing truckers are worried about layoffs. And I'm like, if there's a shortage, then why are they worried about layoffs?
Oh man. Nobody can make up their minds. Yeah, no, it's all very bipolar and inconsistent and about what we would expect from people in the media that have no idea what they're talking about. Um, yeah, man, where to even start with that? I mean, I guess the locus of all the recent activity online is, the sort of confusion around Trump's tariffs and uh what's going on with that. But more recently, we've seen a lot of American trucking companies going out of business. The sort of freight analysis and freight news website, FreightWaves, has
Mhm.
a whole section of their website dedicated to nothing but bankruptcies and layoffs. And it's been going on for a while now. The industry is in what a lot of those guys call a freight recession. And that freight recession started in late 2002, and we haven't got out of it yet. And then when you factor in that freight recession, we also have to add on to the fact that uh, we're undergoing a period of greatly increased labor on the market because in 2021, when there was a demand spike and it actually was really busy, the Biden administration put this thing out called the trucking, the White House, the Biden Harris White House Trucking Action Plan. And if you read it, it's actually quite an interesting document. They acknowledge a number of things about the industry that are true. They said, like we've talked to academics who told us that the trucking industry doesn't have a driver shortage as a retention problem. They acknowledge that. They acknowledge the work of a guy at MIT who I'm trying to get on my podcast. He doesn't work at MIT anymore. He was at USDOT and now he's doing something else. But he did a bunch of research talking about detention time and how the sort of collective amount of detention time that goes on throughout the industry causes something like a 40% capacity underutilization problem. So basically, the way he put it was that at any given time, 40% of America's trucking capacity is tied up at docks. You're just hamstrung, not even working, right? And so that's a problem. They acknowledge that. But then they did the opposite of what everybody recommended. So MIT guy tells Biden, you guys need to fix the detention problem. You guys need to free up capacity. Michael Belzer, author of Sweatshops on Wheels, was consulted, told them, you have to pay drivers more. You'll keep them around. You have a retention problem, not a shortage. What does Biden do? Makes deals with we don't know this. I'm speculating, and this is based on research of my friends at American Truckers United over there in Arkansas. Shannon and Cliff and Harvey, those guys. They have shown that since that trucking action plan came into play in 2021, about 10 states showed radical increases in the issue of commercial driver licenses. And then in the follow-up, so in 2022, the Biden White House puts out an update to their trucking action plan. And in it, they say, in the last 12 months, we have increased the number of CDLs in the United States by 876,000 to help address the driver shortage, which was fake. They were told it was fake by the people they consulted, but they ignored them anyway. And when you look at the traditional number of CDLs that are issued every year, it's typically between 400 and 450,000. And that's CDLs issued by states through CDL schools, technical colleges, truck driving schools, however you get them, 400 to 450,000 a year.
Right.
They managed to double it without doubling the capacity for training. How did they do that? Well, it's the theory of the guys at American Truckers United that because of their investigation into all these extra CDLs, they found a lot of them are what they call non-domicile, which means the state issuing the CDL is giving it to someone who does not live in that state, does not have an address. All right. Well, it turns out most of these extra CDLs are given to people that are not even American. They just showed up here yesterday. So Biden, as we all know, oversaw basically a complete flooding of the United States, period. Never mind the trucking industry. No control on the border, tons of people coming here. And in order to give those people jobs and get them off the street, it is alleged by ATU, the theory goes, that these 10 states that had this excess number of CDLs were somehow in cahoots with the Biden administration, worked with them, and then helped to what Biden calls streamlining and what we might call reducing the standards, right? So you don't need to live here anymore. You don't have to provide an address. You don't have to speak English either. So basically the market got flooded. Right? The long and the short of it, 2021, 2022, the market for drivers gets flooded. It gets doubled what it normally gets in an annual growth in CDLs. And then in 2022, at the end of 2022, the COVID demand spike is gone. and then the great freight recession begins.
Hmm.
So now we've got all these extra drivers, and so what's that mean? Salaries and rates flatline. That's been going on now for a couple of years, and again, we're seeing all these bankruptcies and companies going out of business because they can't keep competing against a flooded market with less demand. Another interesting factor is this gentleman Harvey I've been working with. He and a number of other trucking company owners are getting by on what they call deferrals. So when you go buy a piece of equipment and you have to finance it, you have a payment plan, right? Kind of like a mortgage. And what's happened is that a number of trucking finance companies or finance companies that specialize in like giving money to truckers and trucking companies to purchase equipment have not been repossessing the trucks and have not been like, quote unquote, foreclosing on those loans. And
Hmm.
they're actually telling trucking companies and truck operators, hey, don't worry about it. Just pay us later. Well, that's been going on now for well over a year. And Harvey made an interesting observation about the difference between when the trucking industry slowed way down in 2008 and 9 after the 2008 financial crash. And today, he's like, back then, they started, repossessing trucks immediately. There was fields and fields of trucks everywhere that had
Hmm.
been repoed because guys couldn't pay for them. And he's saying today, well, that's not happening. The trucks aren't being repossessed. So what's going on with that? And his theory is that because a lot of these trucks were sold in 2021, many of them were sold used. They'd already had 3, 4, 5 years on them. And we saw this. I remember this in 2021, where a used Freightliner with 300,000 or 400,000 miles on it was selling for as much, if not more, than a new one
Hmm.
because the demand was that high. So now those trucks are 4 years older and got another 500,000 miles on them, maybe. And uh, the notes on those trucks are underwater. What happens if the financing company or the truck manufacturer, the dealership, repossesses a truck that the loan's underwater, and now the truck is another 4 or 5 years older and twice its age in miles? Like they can't do anything with it. And then
Hmm.
it's going to be on their bucks. So the people north of them are going to like start coming looking for their money. So Harvey's thesis is that they're trying to delay the inevitable. It's not the same as the sort of like 2008 financial crisis where they're like, banks were putting together all these weird derivative products and like assembling and packaging bad loans and trying to sell them off to people and all this strange financial gobbledygook. It's not that messy and it's not that widespread. However, there are a number of finance companies in the United States, credit lenders who are trying to postpone a major problem in the equipment market because they got really greedy in 2021 and the chickens are about to come home to roost on that and they're trying to delay it with this deferred payment thing.
Wasn't it was it 2010, 2011 when they um mandated DEF on the trucks? It was somewhere
Uh
around there, right?
I think it was 2007 the first serious emission controls standards were imposed,
Okay.
and then they've adjusted it every year since. They've like put in new thresholds.
So
And
the reason I ask is because I remember back when they brought the mandates in, and every truck on the road had to be utilizing DEF to for the exhaust. They did a buyback on older trucks. And I remember they were buying these older trucks and they were drilling holes in the blocks. And I'm wondering if you're not looking at a situation where they're putting together that type of like buyback program from these defaulted drivers.
yeah, I don't know. Speaking of the DEF stuff and the emissions control mandates, one of the things that really kind of rubs me the wrong way, and this sort of ties together with the deferral thing, is that Um, when an older American truck, and I say like a recent older, so a truck that was built after these mandates were put on, has a selective catalytic reduction system on it, or DPF, diesel particulate filter system, whatever method of emissions control system is on that truck. A lot of American used trucks get sold overseas, right? They go to Mexico, Central
Right.
America, Africa, Asia, they go all over the place. And the first thing that happens when that truck gets to another country is that emission system gets ripped off
Yeah.
because they don't have to have it. And those operators in those other countries do not get paid the money to be able to afford the parts
Hmm.
for those systems. They don't have the DEF distribution networks. They might not have DEF at all in a lot of these other countries, and they don't have to comply with it. So why would they bother? Right?
Yeah.
So all these trucks get a second or third life overseas and are still doing their thing, but those operators don't have to pay for all the breakdowns, absorb all the downtime, pay for DEF, and do all the stuff the original American owners had to do, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, okay, so you're talking about this jobs program and that Biden put in place for drivers coming from overseas, non-residents. And one thing I want to make clear to people listening, because you and I have been in trucking for a long time, but a lot of these people don't understand how the industry works. So this wouldn't include Mexico and Canada. Mexico and Canada has a free reign to run product across our borders. My wife's cousin from South Africa actually works for a company out of Canada. He crosses into the U.S. every day. He's in the
Yep.
U.S.
Yep.
The I used to run down to the valley all the time. You would see them trucks coming up from Mexico all the time. We would actually meet down there and drop off John Deere trailers for them to cross into the United States, pick up from a distribution center down on the border, and they'd run those trailers down into South America. And so that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about people like the Slavs, which I think we talked about last time about like Russian mafia and stuff like that last
Well,
time getting involved.
yeah, there's all kinds of groups happening here. The sort of Chicago Volvo mafia and the Eastern European gangsters in that neighborhood and in other parts of the country have been around for a while.
Hmm.
This program of Biden's, I think, was, again, people. I encourage people to go back and read the document in that white trucking action plan. It said that, like, the American Trucking Association and its members were complaining about the fact that drivers and trucking companies rates had gone up on a 7 to 12% premium, right? So basically, like, if you read between the lines, they don't say it explicitly, but it is implied that you guys are getting paid too much. We can't have that, right? And also, and again, it was told to Biden. I've talked to the people that spoke to these guys, that spoke to Buttigieg, right? Like Steve Fischelli, Michael Belzer, these professionals, academics that have studied trucking, told Biden and Buttigieg,
Hmm.
you don't need more drivers. There's
Yeah.
tons of people with CDLs out there. You just have to pay them more and encourage them to come
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Paying people more money and improving the material conditions of the job is off the table for our ruling class.
Right.
So import the third world, right? So Biden's got these two things happening. He's been very soft on the borders, and all kinds of people are flooding into the U.S. All these people are coming from other parts of the world claiming to be refugees. And Biden's got the American Trucking Association, a corporate lobbying group, breathing down his neck about having to pay their drivers too much money. Well, look
Yeah.
at that. There's a solution.
Well, I've
And
noticed what I was going to say is I've noticed here recently that I've seen a lot of like Muslim writing on trucks recently in the Houston area. Whenever I'm going around the Houston area, you'll see a lot of it. And I'm wondering because in the Ukraine, so the Ukraine has a
do you mean Arabic?
yeah, that word. Um, It's still early, dude. So in the Ukraine, I think the cutoff, if I'm not mistaken, the cutoff, the youngest a person can join the military is 25 years old. And that's because they want to preserve the younger generation to impregnate women and have future generations going forward. I'm wondering if some of this isn't a jobs program for Ukrainians in order to get them out of the war situation to where they're not being killed, being flooded over here into America, give them a job that can sustain them until the war ends and then they go back to Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that. There was an incident here in Alabama a week or two ago. I don't know if you saw that video. Thomasville, Alabama, but a little small town about 100 miles north of Mobile.
Mm,
There's a bunch of traffic sitting at a red light. Light turns green. Nobody's started moving yet. And then the right hand lane, there's like four vehicles sitting in a row. And this guy just full speed with an 18 wheeler vaporizes the first two cars, kills the drivers instantly, flips off the other ones, like just spins them right out of the lane. You don't see his brake lights on, nothing. Turns out that driver is from the Ukraine,
mm.
in the United States on a work visa. In the sort of investigations that a number of us have been doing online, I want to give some shout outs to my friend Danielle, who is sort of adjacent to trucking. Her dad was a trucker and her grandpa was a trucker, and now she works for a company that makes transportation management systems, like dispatch systems for big trucking companies. But she's a sort of online Twitter sleuth, and she started chasing some of this stuff down. There was another lady online named Samantha who I've come to know, and a lot of the information about trucking companies is online because there's this system that FMCSA maintains called Safer, and
Mm.
you can punch in the MC number of any trucking company, and it'll tell you where they're registered, a bunch of the info about it. And it turns out that this Ukrainian gentleman that smoked all those cars in Alabama is working for one of these what they call ghost carriers up out of Chicago. The trucking company itself was registered at the same address as a pizza joint, which was in the same building as a Dunkin' Donuts. And well, a thing that people have figured out is that the FMCSA is not enforcing their own rule. Under the law, a trucking company has to be registered where the FMCSA can come in and say, we want to see all your records. We want to see your safeties for your trucks, your inspections, all your hours of service. All the records you are required to maintain by law must be available at this physical location. That's where your MC number is supposed to be located, right?
Hmm.
And it turns out that there's hundreds of thousands of MC numbers that are now located in apartment complexes, pizza joints, PO boxes, virtual address services. That's all illegal, right?
Hmm.
And so what's happening is all these companies are registered all over the place through like layers of LLCs. This LLC is owned by that LLC, by that LLC. And like the trucks themselves are maybe owned by one of these things, but like they're just out there. There's no like home base for them. And then the
Hmm.
drivers are often brought in by the same people that own the LLCs. So it turns out that this gentleman from the Ukraine working for a company that's registered to a pizza joint in Chicago, pizza joint in Chicago is owned by the same guy who owns the MC numbers. The building is owned by them. There's this whole like network of companies all together by this Russian dude. And then there's this lady who's got a website that's called Balkan Truckers or something. And basically it's a
Right.
recruiting site in Serbia that's meant to bring truck drivers from Eastern Europe into the United States. And it advertises all these companies with Eastern European names that are operating in the US and hooks them up with drivers from over there. And then they advertise for electronic logging device consultants and back end help. Oh, are you having trouble with your ELD? We can help you. What they mean is the trouble is actually complying with the rules, and they go in through back doors and adjust the ELD so that you can just keep driving without having to worry about complying with hours of service.
Right.
So there's all this like really murky shit going on with these sort of in-source truckers from other countries who are working for companies owned by their ethnic homeboys through layers of like basically LLCs that are not complying with the law, and doing really dodgy shit.
Mm. Yeah, I see. I see kind of their point in wanting to get by the law because some of the laws are ridiculous. And, because I mean, when I first started driving, it was what, 16 and 8, and now it's 14 and 10. So I can kind of see it's like if it was good enough then, why isn't it good enough now? But at the same time, when you have all the American companies are kind of stuck in this situation where they're so overregulated, they're audited constantly, they're looked at all the time that you can't compete with this kind of traffic coming in.
Well, no, you can't. And this is the thing is it's not just like a safety issue, it's also a labor issue, right?
Mm,
Again, go back to that trucking action plan. The people who run all the shipping and trucking industries in America are were not happy that drivers' wages had a little mini spike in 2021. The overall trend for them is to be flatlined or stay the same, right? Like in 2016, there was a really interesting article about how like since 1980 and 2016, when you adjusted for inflation, truck drivers' wages were like way less than what they were in 1980. Like,
60% less. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's just like a constant like down. Now, that's an average. There are still good trucking companies out there that will pay you 100 grand a year, but they are in the minority.
Yeah.
Don't forget how averages work, everyone. I get criticized by about this by like there's a guy that my dad used to work for that I used to work for part time and help him out, and he's the brother of these other dudes I worked for. Nice guy, runs a tight ship, but he's got that sort of boomer con mentality that like, well, why would you work for those guys then? There's guys making 100 grand, just go work for them. But like he
Hmm.
doesn't understand how averages work. He is in the small percentage of good trucking
Right.
companies treating his people right and thinks that just anybody and everybody can do that. But he's not realizing that the average is getting pulled down by all of the friggin' bottom feeders at the bottom end that the government isn't doing anything about.
Right.
Right. So like there would be way more people earning way more money and the industry would be cleaned up significantly if the barrier to entry wasn't so low, right?
Right.
And I mean, I don't want to say people shouldn't have the chance to go into business for themselves. I'm talking about the very basic stuff like getting a CDL or registering with the government as a motor carrier. All that it takes to register as a motor carrier in the United States is $300 and an address.
Yeah. Well, and
Like,
and people think that it's just the foreign country companies that are driving down the wages, and it's not. When I started driving truck in 2003, I went to work for Halliburton. Well, they paid me $8.50 an hour to drive. So here was the catch. I would leave the house, let's say, because we did like I want to say it was a 7 and 2 shift. So I was on call for 7 days, and then I was off for 2 days, on call for 7 days, off for 2 days. I mean, that's the way it worked. They would call me at 2 o'clock in the morning the day I went in on call. I would leave the house. I wouldn't be home until that next weekend when my 7 days were up. I was sleeping in a day cab on a piece of plywood that ran between the seats. So from the time I left the house until the time I left the yard to go back home, I got paid. I got paid every hour. But a lot of that time I was saying, "Oh, I'm sleeping in a hotel," when I was actually out on a job on a rig site, sleeping on a piece of plywood in a day cab, like because they
yeah.
didn't have sleepers. So I mean, I think we had like one or two sleepers at our yard there in Rosharon, but so the standards are not only set by these foreign companies. You have these huge companies that have the ability to pay off the government and to get favors and to kind of skirt the laws, and then that hurts your smaller, because you'll find that it's your usually your smaller mom and pop companies that actually pay better. It's those guys that were used to be truck drivers that work their way up. Now they own a fleet of like 5 or 10 trucks and they're hiring drivers. They pay pretty well. But the larger companies are the ones that are driving those wages down because they can just cycle through drivers like there's no tomorrow. And back then, when I got my license, Halliburton ran its own training course in Corpus Christi. It was a 3 week course. You went and you stayed in a Holiday Inn for 3 weeks. You went to classes for 2 weeks, and then the third week they had you in a truck learning how to drive it. You know,
Right. Yeah. Well, so one of the rubs about this, one of the nuances um, about this situation is that you've got really big guys like Halliburton, and then big carriers like members of the American Trucking
Swift, Crete,
Association, guy,
Schneider.
yeah, who
Yeah,
you also work for.
yeah,
Um, they don't necessarily directly employ these in-source drivers, right? For the most part, they hire locals and homeboys. They're too big and they have too much exposure to hire illegals or people with like
right.
dubious work visas or non-domiciled CDLs. However, they do benefit from all of that stuff happening because, as my friend Shannon from ATU explained, there's now, he calls it two, but I call it three different um, trucking industries. There's three parallel trucking industries in the United States, broadly speaking. One is the big freight stuff, that's all the ATA guys. And then there's another one that's a network of all these little small companies run mostly by recent arrivals. Some people are here, they're legitimate immigrants, but like they're abusing their homeboys who just got here after them.
Hmm.
And then dubious work visas. Maybe they're refugees, maybe they're migrants, legal or illegal. Their CDL trading is suspicious to say the least. And a lot of those guys are running the what Shannon called the high mile stuff, 2,000 mile plus lanes, because they've got two or three guys in the truck. And you see this a lot with the Indian community. They don't stop. There's just
Mm.
like three guys in that truck and they just go, 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 go. And they don't pay them very much. But because of the wage differential from the Punjab or Guatemala or Ethiopia to the United States, even if they're getting paid a third of what we would get paid, that's way better than what they got at
Mm.
home. So they're willing to come here and like basically work as indentured servants or
Right.
serfs. And so they help keep rate pressure on the rest of the business, which the big guys can deal with because they have economics of scale. They get their tires cheaper, their fuel cheaper, a lot of them self-insure. They are able through their size to be able to manage the price pressure that comes from that part of the industry. And then the third part of the industry, as you put it, is the small to medium sized carriers run by either mom and pops or families, or they've been around for 40 or 50 years, like the guys I used to work for in Canada. And they're trying to do the right thing, playing by the rules, trying to pay their drivers well, maybe sticking to sort of niche industries. But like the price pressure between having to compete with the ATA guys and then all of these recent arrivals is really, really cutting
Right.
their grass. And it's those companies are the ones that are going out of business,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
these,
Well, and also the lumpers running up prices, and
oh,
I
it's
mean, you
just
have you
everywhere.
have all kinds of issues
Oh, the
whenever it comes
scams,
up.
though. I mean, the lumper scam, that's another thing is like, the lumper thing to me, I just can't, like, everyone talks about like, we're a vertically integrated company. We do things seamlessly and we make everything so much easier, except actual physical movement of goods and material reality. How is it in 2025 we still have warehouses and distribution centers that have a way of they want their freight stacked, but at the other end, sending it to them will not stack it that way, and then we have to have people restack it.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Maybe there's just like a way it has to get shipped. Maybe it's like dealing with the volume of the trailer. Whatever. Okay, that's fine. But what's happened is they've turned that problem into a parasitizing industry, right? So like it used to be that you would hire a lumper. I remember when I was a kid, I'd be riding around with my dad, and this is when he had moved to the United States, and he's working for this reefer carrier out of Binghamton, who was actually like a subcontractor to another company in Chicago.
Yeah.
But anyway, we go into like a Wegmans grocery store. So there's a big grocery chain in New York and Pennsylvania called Wegmans, and they have a huge distribution center in Rochester, New York. So anyway, we go to Rochester, and there's always the guys that would hang out outside the gate. They would be honest. They'd have a CB in their car. They would call every trucker coming in. Hey, man, how many cases you got? What's your stack look like? And they would negotiate on the CB how much they would charge you in cash to be your lumper, right? My dad was telling me all this, but he would end up telling them, no, I got my own lumper with me because I was riding with him and I was the carry-on lumper, right?
Right.
But now the lumping or the lumper industry has been quote unquote professionalized, where it's done by these in-house services that are often owned by the same distribution center or warehouse or like some buddy of theirs, and they have a contract that says you can only use our lumpers. The
Mm-hmm.
driver is not allowed on the dock to stack it himself. You
Mm-hmm.
must pay us. And
Yep.
then they charge you something ridiculous like $800. The guys stacking the boxes, doing the lumping, are not getting that $800. They're getting paid a teeny tiny bit more than minimum wage. And then the rest of that money is going into one of these like crook middlemen
Yeah.
agencies,
And
right?
a lot of those guys that you'll find on the docks are illegals because they can get away with paying them less, right?
Yeah.
I remember whenever I first started driving over the road, I would always unload my own trailers because they would give me like the lumper was charging $150 and they would pay me 125. And I was like, I'll take the extra 125. I'll just do it. I'd done physical labor my entire life. It didn't bother me none to get in there with a pallet jack and move pallets around or slide furniture off my truck or whatever I had to do.
Yeah, no, I on the very few occasions where I did pull refrigerated trailers or freight trailers, and I didn't do it very often, but when I did and there was a lumper involved, I always just said, nope, I'll write out a receipt and lump it myself and take the $150.
Right.
There was no way I was just going to sit in the truck and let somebody else do it when I could get paid
Right.
extra. The hell with
Yeah.
that. I mean, I'm there. I might as well do it, you know?
Yeah, well, and you don't want to lay down and take a nap because then you wake up and you got to leave because they don't let you sleep on site at any of these warehouses. So you got to get off site anyway. So now you're all like all foggy and you're like your eyes are all just blurry. And
Yeah.
now you're driving at 2 o'clock in the morning because they never unload you at a decent hour. They give
No.
you an appointment between like 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. and like good luck getting out of there before 6. It's just
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been a lot of accidents lately, right? And I'm
Hmm.
gonna try and sort of tie all this together. Very high. There's been all these high profile accidents. The one I just mentioned in Alabama. It appears there was another one about 7 o'clock this morning in Georgia. I just heard about, south of Chattanooga, going down towards Atlanta. There was an accident earlier this week coming into Chattanooga. Another one out in Austin, Texas, in March, and like guys not slowing down, driving straight into stop traffic. Multiple fatalities, people getting burned, wrecked cars,
Mm.
and it's just chaotic out there right now, and all of this stuff is connected. Okay,
Hmm.
so in-source labor. Um, Donald Trump signed an executive order a week and a half ago, or was it 2 weeks ago now? Yeah, it's 2 weeks ago, saying, you know, English proficiency will be reinforced.
Right.
It's been the law in the United States to have a CDL, to get a CDL, that you have to show English proficiency, a basic level of English proficiency that you can communicate with enforcement officials, read signs, read warning signs, fill out documentation because you have to do a pre-trip every day. You have to fill out a logbook. You have to like every 2 years to get your medical. You have to fill out a medical questionnaire. You can't do that if you can't read English, right?
Hmm.
This is all there is to it, right?
Right.
And so that there's a couple of things going on here. 2016, the FMCSA under Obama waives one of the enforcement tools that the DOT and police have to enforce that law. They basically said, you guys can't place trucks out of service, drivers out of service anymore. Failing a roadside English exam used to result in you being placed out of service as a driver, right? The
Right.
cops could say, you are not driving this truck. Your inability to read English means you're a danger to other motorists and you're done. They
Hmm.
can't take your CDL, but they can put you off to the side of the road. And
Hmm.
the implication was that go learn English
Mm.
and come back
Right.
trucking once you figured out English. No one's
Right.
saying you can't be a trucker. No one's saying, oh, you dirty Mexicans or whatever. All we're saying is go learn English first, right?
Hmm.
Is that like is that an unreasonable request?
No, I think you and I had talked about this before. When I was in Namibia, I was driving through Namibia with my father-in-law, and luckily he was with me because he's from there, and so he was able to kind of direct me and get me going in the right way. Not only am I having to learn to drive on the other side of the road, now I'm trying to figure out what their road signs say because they're not written out like theirs, like ours. They're symbols. And so I'm like, what does this one mean? What does that one mean? Because road signs all across the world are different. And so I'm looking at one sign and it says 800 on it. And I'm like, I can't go 800 miles per hour. Like, what the hell does this mean? So it's stuff like that. Like, I needed, somebody there that was able to translate the road signs to me. Let me know what these road signs mean, what they're saying, what I must do to follow the law. And it took me a day or two to figure out what most of the signs said. And I was like, okay, I get it. I can do it. But I mean, you have to have just at least a basic level of proficiency of reading and understanding because a lot of our signs are written out in English, right?
Right.
And that
Yeah.
whereas in other countries, their signs may be just like in Namibia, it's symbols or numbers, and you got to figure out what does this number mean? Why does it say 800M? Like what is 800M? Oh, I
Right.
can't stop in this area for within 800 meters of this area. Okay, got it. Okay, that's fine. But it's just simple things like that. You got to learn to be able to translate into the language that you're now dealing with on the road. And so, yeah, no, that's perfectly reasonable to ask that. I do want to go back to something you were saying. I don't think people understand when you were mentioning Punjab, Ethiopia, the price differences in the trucking companies. So in South Africa, the rand is 18 rand is $1, right? So their truckers there make the equivalent of $50 a day to drive truck. Now they're dealing with hijackings. They don't have very strict laws, so you don't know if you don't do post trips, pre trips. You're in dangerous situations constantly. There's a lot of hills, mountains, and stuff like that in South Africa, and so one of the things that Beatrix and I have talked about is moving back to South Africa. We're planning on making that trip in probably about 10 years and moving to Cape Town. And one thing that we both realize is I can't work there. It wouldn't be worth my time or effort to go to work there. It's too
Right.
dangerous, number one,
Right.
and I wouldn't make any money.
Can I
So,
make a can I put a quick pause on what you're saying here to make a point?
yeah, sure.
Um, so a lot of people get on my case a bit about the sort of in-source driver stuff, and then we got all these guys in Canada from India driving trucks, same here in the States, especially out in California, and all people from all over the world are coming to America to drive truck to do a bunch of different jobs, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things I like to say is like, can you find me a white guy in a check shirt like this driving around the Punjab rolling trucks over? Can you find a guy that looks like me driving truck in uh name your country, Central America, right? Like there's no like the working class of the United States of America, of Canada, the West more broadly, like this is it. There's nowhere else for us to go,
Yeah.
right? I can't move to another country and get better money than what I can do in Canada. I mean, maybe Australia slightly on the margin, but like they're not going to let me move there. They're too
Hmm.
busy letting in the Indians in. They got the same problem down there. There's just tons and tons of Indian migration to all these Anglosphere countries, but there's nowhere for us to go. So if our markets get flooded with in-source labor from whatever country, and those guys are happy to work cheaper than us because it's better than where they're from,
Right.
we don't get the same deal. We got nowhere to go. The working class of the West have nowhere to go. This is it for us. It can
Hmm.
only get worse. And the government is making it worse by encouraging this, right? Like you said, was
And
you can't go to South Africa and drive truck because you're stepping down,
yeah, and
right?
I heard a guy say the other day, he said, well, and people in America, realize that it's much better to work an office job for Goldman Sachs than it is to drive a truck. And I was like, this guy is fucking insane. I would never be in an office job for
Well, no,
anyone.
never mind that. You couldn't get one. So like people don't understand how the class system works in North America. They think it's gone and it's just like all meritocracy and
Yeah.
everything's so easy. No, like people in the case that work in office jobs and work in management and administration, it's all credentialism. You have to know people and you have to have the right credentials from the right institutions, letters after your name, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees for whatever pursuit. And they've made that like the minimum barrier to entry to get into a lot of what we call office jobs, laptop jobs, email
Mhm.
jobs. You can't just transfer and do that. It's not
I
happening.
wouldn't want to.
I know you
Some
wouldn't
of us
want to.
don't want to. Like that's what
Exactly.
I'm
Well,
saying.
there's
This
that
guy is like
too.
coming, he's speaking from such a point of ignorance, like saying, well, people would rather do this. And I'm like, what people? I wouldn't rather do that. I want to be out there, getting my hands dirty and, moving things around and seeing something produced and in front of my eyes and being part of a project. Like that's what I enjoy. So I don't understand who you're talking about. Just because you want to or you think it's better doesn't mean it's better for everybody. Some of us actually enjoy being hands-on with these jobs and and somebody's got to do the hard work. You need those people with that mentality that'll, be a lineman, after a hurricane. You're not getting a Goldman Sachs guy to go be a lineman after a fucking hurricane, you know? Like that's just
No,
not the way it works.
no. And yeah, I that not just not the way it works. People don't understand how things work and they think they've got easy answers to stuff, right? Even I
Mm,
think I have easy answers to stuff, but like at least where it regards trucking, I've been in it my whole life and I know how it functions and I can see very clearly what's going on here. But back to Trump. So Trump announces this executive order. I go looking around the media in the last 2 weeks afterwards, and there's a few like sort of lefty mainstream places that are doing the usual thing. There's one guy in the LA Times
racist,
calling
blah,
him a
blah, blah.
racist.
Yeah.
The New Republic says, "What do you need to read English for to drive a truck?" Which gives away that certain people think that like, oh, just anybody can do it, right?
Right.
They don't actually believe in craft. They don't believe in skill. They don't believe in training. We're just all interchangeable human resources slurry, and that's what they think of us. Remember that in the back of your head when you're looking at these issues, right? Like they believe that guys like me and you have nothing extra to offer, that
Yep.
our experience doesn't mean anything, that the moxie, the drive, the work ethic that we possess doesn't mean anything because again and again and again, trucking is not a job for people who are not self-starters. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, a lot of sacrifice, many hours away from home. It is not just a job.
Hmm.
Anyone that tells you trucking is just a job is just a retard.
Hmm. I can't tell you how many times I meet like a young kid especially when I was working at the store, somebody'd be working on the yard, a forklift operator, loading up customers, blah blah blah, telling me, "Yeah, I'm about to start trucking school," and then 5 months later, they're back at the company, and I'm like, "What happened?" They're like, "Oh yeah, that's not for me. That's not for me." Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a nasty freaking industry.
it's Nazi, but one of the reasons it
Well, one thing I always tell people is you got to be really comfortable with yourself because it's just you a lot of times.
yes,
There's no turning on the radio. You're not getting signal on your phone. You're like it's just you.
yeah, you have to be comfortable in your own company. You have to be comfortable getting screwed around by everybody. This is the thing, right? Like, and again, getting back to like detention and getting screwed around. Like, you show up at places and like people don't care that you're there. Like,
Hmm.
there's a problem with a lot of facilities. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of big facilities. All they do is deal with truckers, and they just do not give a shit. You're just another trucker. They don't care how much of your time that you wait of your time that they waste, which you don't get paid for. And then you like sit there and after a while, if you're outside the business and you don't understand that this is how it works, that it's a daily encounter with people who do not care about you, your job, your schedule, your pay, your nothing. Nobody gives a shit. You are the bottom of the list everywhere you go. And the only people that care about whether or not you make any money is you and maybe your dispatcher, but usually they don't care either if it's a big enough company. And like you, unless you have the sort of internal strength to understand and realize that and then just roll with it, it's not going to be for you, which
Mm-hmm.
means it's not going to be for most people, which means that that example of some young guy that takes off, gets a CDL, comes back to work five months later, they've washed out. They've come into the system, they've realized what's going on, and they're like, holy shit, man, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
The that the fact that that's not ever been fixed, the rampant detention, the not being paid overtime, the not being paid for all your loading and unloading time, getting treated like garbage everywhere you go, because none of that stuff has been addressed, they just keep cycling through people, right? So we've talked about this before, the corporate welfare finance of
Yep.
CDL mills, right? I think one of the reasons you're seeing the insourcing of labor is that people are listening to guys like me and you. They have read books by guys like Steve Shelley, and they've done their due diligence. Like somebody that like went to truck driving school 5 or 6 years ago, went on YouTube, found us, found other people talking about this, and were like, wow, man, that sucks. I'm not doing that. And so
Mm-hmm.
now they're getting less local people into the trucking schools and into the CDL mills, right? They've actually begun to hit bottom with the local domestic labor supply because the word has got out now. So, who are we going to use? Are we going to are our rulers taking that as a symbol? Maybe we should start fixing things. Maybe we should start paying people more. Maybe we should improve the material conditions of the job. Maybe we should treat these people like humans. No, they're just stepping on the gas. Let's just import people from all over the world who don't know any better, don't speak the language, have no idea what they're getting into. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, we're going to keep building our robots here to replace all of them anyway. They literally do not give a fuck.
Well, and I've always told these like where I'm at now, I work with some young guys that are driving truck and they've never been over the road. They've only driven locally. And one of the guys was asking me one time about it and I was like, "Look, man." I was like, "It's a sad state of affairs when I can be gone on the road 2 months at a time, miss all my kids' birthdays, miss any kind of holidays, miss everything, not be able to get to the doctor, not be able to take care of myself just to make sure that my kids are taken care of. And now I'm working locally and I'm home every night and I make as much, if not more money now than I did when I was over the road." That's a sad state of affairs for that over the road system that they had. Now, this guy, he pulled up and he left, but he went out to Midland, Odessa. He's driving an oil field now. He's probably making twice as much amount of money he was making at the distribution center, which is fine. That's great. He's 23 years old, just got his license. You know, he doesn't have any responsibility, no kids. I'm like, go do it, man. Go make the money while you can. But you got to be careful when you're going into the OTR world because like you're not guaranteed to make anything. Some of these guys are making $32,000 a year, whereas you can get a local job making $20 an hour, get some overtime, and you're making more than you would be if you're out there over the road.
Yeah, no, and like I say, the training system in the United States is back asswards. You go to some CDL school that's owned by a big trucking company or community college or wherever you went. The main funnel for all those new guys is the big carriers. And those
Mm-hmm.
are the guys that throw you off the deep end. Oh, you're going OTR now, which
Right.
is a hard job. You have to have developed that internal strength and that fortitude to be able to deal with it. You have to understand the sort of rhythms of the job. You have to know all the little tricks, getting in and out of places. You know, there any number of facilities has got all their own rules about things. Figuring out how to get under trailers that are dropped a little bit too low, figuring out like different, systems of the trucks and trailers themselves, like figuring out how to do little minor maintenance things. So you have to like wait on somebody, the preventive maintenance stuff. There's just all these little things you need to learn. And these people just get thrown off the deep end with no water wings. Poof, there you go. Go out over the road. You don't know any of this stuff. We got you your bare minimum of training to pass you a CDL test. Now you're an OTR driver.
Mm-hmm.
The whole system is fucking backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, And if you go work for any of these carriers for any amount of time, if you want to be a regional driver, which means that you work, you'll work about 5.5, 6 days, you'll be home for 1.5 days, then you're back driving. Um, and you're usually within 2 or 3 states. When I did it, I was Texas, Louisiana, sometimes Arkansas. Um, every once in a while, I'd go to Mississippi, but for the most part, it was just Texas and Louisiana, and just the eastern part of Texas, and then all of Louisiana. And you should start these guys that want to be OTR drivers in that regional position, riding with a regional driver, getting their training from a regional driver. But the way it's set up now is you have to have experience. You have to have established yourself with that company for 5, 6 years to get that regional position. They reserve those positions as a point of reference and kind of like a benefit to their older drivers, which is fine. If you have an older driver that's been driving for a while, he's tired of going over the road, he wants to be home a little bit more, fine. Like work with him on the regional scene, that's fine. But you shouldn't be throwing these 22-year-old, 23-year-old kids over the road by themselves into these trucks. They have no idea what they're doing. Sure, they went through their training, et cetera, but they never experienced half the stuff that you have to experience over the road. I learned how to drive mountains by damn near burning up my brakes going down a fucking mountain. That's how I learned. Like I didn't
I
know what I was doing. I had driven in Houston locally and up into Oklahoma City, for
flat you did
12 years.
you did mostly flatland trucking. It's funny you mentioned that. So I'm writing this book about the business, and I decided to try and track down some people that are doing things correctly. Right?
Mm,
You and I have discussed all the problems with trucking and the bad vibes and the issues. I'm trying to find people that are actually doing things correctly. So there's a gentleman in British Columbia who owns a trucking company called the Mountain Transport Institute, and
hmm
that's their bread and butter is training people in the mountains. Well, you go to that guy's training school, your tractor Super B, 140,000 pounds.
mm,
You're going to go up and down the Rocky Mountains with that thing, and you're going to do it safely. You're going to pull the hill and get down the hill without touching your brakes. You're going to teach you how to put on tire chains. We're going to teach you how to live like a British Columbia snow monkey. And he's doing it correctly. And
right.
his school is so well renowned now that there are American carriers that send trucks up to Alaska, or they have business in BC, or they just want proper mountain training for drivers that are operating in certain parts of the United States.
Mm.
American trucking companies send their drivers to this guy in BC for correct mountain operations.
Yeah, that's smart. You need it. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. It's like what 2 o'clock in the morning. It's pitch black, and I see a sign and it says 6% grade, 14 miles. I don't know what this means. I'm like, okay, and
You probably know even less about what that means if you don't speak English.
right, yes. But all right. Speaking of I just talked to Quincy the other day. You remember Quincy?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Cubone.
So he called me. He called me the other day, and he just got a new job. He's driving for a new company. You should probably get in touch with him because it sounds like the company he's working for is doing things right. So maybe talk to him. Maybe see what they're doing over there, and maybe you'll have some people you can get in touch with over there.
All right.
All right, man. Well, plug away. What are you doing?
What am I doing? I'm working on a book. It's called End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers, which is a book-length examination of many of the things you and I have discussed. I'm way behind on it. I've only got about 5 chapters started. Manuscript is due in August, and I am feeling extremely under pressure to get this done. But then I've been so busy helping these guys at American Truckers United. I've uh, I've written 4 articles for them, specifically commissioned by Zero Hedge, the sort of big news website.
Nice.
So I've had a bunch of articles at Zero Hedge. Um, I've wrote some stuff for the American Conservative recently on this English executive order on autonomous trucking. I'm working with this guy named James who's been on my podcast a bunch. He's working on some projects that I might be involved in on the sort of more lefty progressive side of the media sphere because they're starting to notice and pay attention what's going on with automation.
Mm-hmm.
So I might be doing some more stuff with them, but primarily I'm working on this book. The publishing company is called Creed and Culture Books. They don't even have a website out yet. They're new. One of the founders worked at this place called ISI, and he was behind another website called Front Porch Republic. And then there's like a sort of silent partner venture capital dude. But anyway, I'm doing that. I'm trying to get about another half a dozen of my podcasts out the door, but I haven't edited yet. Many of which were like dual purpose, also interviewing people for the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm swamped. I've got two beautiful daughters. One just turned 7, the other one turned 5. Vivian and Georgia. So I'm being dad, and I'm working on books, and just trying to keep the homestead here on lockdown.
15 years ago, you never thought you'd be doing this shit.
No, man. I never thought I'd be working on a book. I didn't even think my Substack would start up, but that's how it happened. These guys saw my Substack and they're like, "Hey, we think you got a book in you. You seem to be speaking about this industry and the people in it in ways that no one else is doing, and you should expand on that for us." So here we are. My Substack, by the way, autonomoustruckers.substack.com. Go and subscribe. If you're a person of means and you're feeling generous, paid subscriptions are welcomed. I'm broke. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
When you have merch too. I saw you wearing your autonomous truckers hat on War Room.
Oh yeah. Oh geez. Yeah, I got invited on Steve Bannon twice in the last month. Oh man,
That was
that's
cool.
yeah. I've been trying to like keep that on the down low, man. Not because I don't like Steve or I don't agree with his project. I just where I live, the name Steve Bannon might as well be Adolf Hitler or something, just because our politics are so screwed up that like if you actually advocate for your own country and the people that live there, that makes you a fascist.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then, because of all the stuff that Trump's had to put up with, Bannon's implicated and everybody just says these ridiculous things about him. But anyway, yeah, I was on there talking about the same things that like American Truckers United,
Right.
just with the sort of in-sourced labor and that connection to wage suppression and all these accidents we're seeing out on the road. So, yeah, and the hat that was made by a fan, Ben McCauley, who's a trucker in Chicago. He was making hats and selling them online for a while, so he made me a hat and sent it to me.
Cool. Well, we're
Yeah,
proud of you, brother. It's good to see you rocking and rolling. I know you got a lot
yeah.
of work to do, but hey, man,
I'm
it
I'm
keeps the blood pumping.
it is, and I can't wait till it's done because I want to go back on the road. I'm jealous of your position. Me driving a flatbed around and being home every day, that's like my dream job. Just deliver lumber. I would love to get back into logging. My last trucking job was hauling logs. I loved
Mm,
it. I like logging. I'd rather be in a truck, but like the economy has sucked, and there's just so many people trying to destroy and ruin our truckers' good time. There's just no jobs around where I live that are like I would be able to. There's just nothing, right?
we
So,
lost a curtain truck to one of those loggers the other day.
like in an incident.
Yeah, he made the turn to catch the scales and his load was sticking out and just ripped that curtain truck.
Oh yeah, no, man. When you got the logs hanging off the
Yep.
back, you got your
Yep.
turn radius.
Yep. Yeah.
Gotta be careful of that.
Yeah, the driver, she was like, I didn't even feel it. She goes, I just happened to be looking in my mirror as he was turning, and I saw that log just rip right through that curtain. I was like, oh shit.
Ooh.
Yep. So, yep. But all right, man. I know you got a busy day, and I appreciate your time always. So I'm gonna let you get off of here.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tommy, and I appreciate you having me on. It's good to talk with a fellow driver and a good mensch and a good buddy and somebody that gets it. It's been cathartic to sort of rant a little bit, and pardon me if it was a bit much, but I'm passionate about these things. So
It's awesome, man. And I can't wait till your book comes out so I can get you back on and we can talk about it.
yeah, publishing early March 2026, hopefully, if I actually get it done. Fingers
Nice.
crossed.
You'll get it done.
All right, man. I appreciate your vote of confidence. And yeah, man, thanks so much.
All right, brother. I'm gonna stop the recording.